I'm Paul Newbury. I'm one of the founders of Yard. Yeah, so Yard is a digital agency. So I suppose we do marketing services, but we're very technical. We like data. So we do marketing services with a difference, I suppose. Where did it all start? So started because myself and my business partner, we met at Lloyd's TSB. And we'd seen consultants coming into Lloyd's TSB who were being pretty well paid for doing a pretty substandard job, frankly. So the two of us at that time thought, well, we're kind of young enough and we're ballsy enough, so why don't we just go and do that as well? So that's where it all started. Started off Lloyd's TSB, the name Yard, unsurprisingly came from the Yard pub, which is where we were sat when we were having these conversations, and the rest is history, really. No, I definitely didn't always know that I wanted to start a business. When we were working at Lloyd's, it was good fun. It was an opportunity to make quite a bit of change in a big business. But like I said, it just felt right at the time. When you look back now, it's quite scary to have thought that we went through that process at the time. But it was the right decision. But no, it wasn't something I'd thought about forever. At the time, I had a young family. Stephen didn't. My business partner, Stephen, didn't. So he kind of started the business while I took a job, and I was working in the evenings and the weekends to try and make ends meet, whilst at the same time start a business, which is quite scary. We were quite lucky though. We very early on landed Sainsbury's Bank as one of our clients. Still a client now, so we're doing something right. But off the back of that, and I think a lot of that comes from the experience and the fact that we had that experience at Lloyd's TSB. So other financial services people were looking at us and looking at what we'd done previously. So we, I don't want to say it was easy in the early days, but actually it started and accelerated pretty quickly for us. There wasn't a lot of downtime early on, that's for sure. At Lloyd's, we were developing skills for Lloyd's, ultimately, or for my next job, or the one after that. I was almost bombarded by the business startup thing. Really excited by it at the same time. Like I said, it felt right. Felt like it was the right thing to do. But we hadn't planned this for a long time, or we hadn't thought about how we might do it. I suppose there is a sort of an anecdote around the actual process. We went from Lloyd's first to be left unnamed agency, who were looking for the sort of services that we could provide. As part of an agency setup, and had said to us, come in, start this service for us. That was exciting, and that kind of felt like the natural progression from a job to a job. But very quickly what we realised was actually not only were they still in control, so we didn't have the control that we kind of wanted, but also because of how new it was, they were very nervous about starting it anyway. So that didn't work out for whatever reason, and that was the point at which we said, right, okay, well we'll just do this ourselves. Yeah, what's caught me by surprise? It's been 12 years, and when we started the business, we were just trying to prove a point, almost. We were just trying to prove that we could do these consultancy services for businesses for a fair price, but well, which is the experience was very much different, like I said. We're now 12 years on, we've got 52 staff. That sneaks up on you pretty quickly. And what I've kind of noticed, I suppose, during that period is things change a lot. If there's a word of advice I could give people is, always constantly plan for the next 3 years, because that 3-year plan will change every year. It's no good waiting until the end of a period of time to then look at that. And in the early days for us, we didn't plan for 3 years or 5 years. Like I said, we were looking at a lifestyle business, but it's very different now to where we started. I think you need to just be clear on what your goals are for those 3 years. A lot of people start a business because they want to sell a business at the end of a period of time, and if that's what the intention is, then as long as you know that, you can work towards that accordingly. We've now got financial targets, for example, and that's really helpful because we know that we want to get to the next milestone on our financial targets. We just didn't have that before. So we were looking for growth and we were looking for extra revenue. We were looking, eventually we started looking at, right, okay, this is great. We've got a few people working for us. let's target getting a few more people, but it wasn't really well formed in those early days, and as a result, I mean, like I said, you could say we were lucky, or we planned to get here, but there was no formal plan for it, certainly. Yeah, I think the key lessons for growing a team are to interview well, to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with good people. And those good people might not be the best skilled people right now either. We are, strong advocates for taking on the right kind of person, or the right person with the right attitude, or good people that don't necessarily know what we do even, and making sure that we train them up to our standard. Then it works perfectly if you take that approach. One of the other things I think we've kind of learned in terms of growing a team is about getting the roles right. It doesn't. Well, I'm sure there are some people who are perfect, but I'm certainly not, and Stephen certainly isn't. And for us, making sure we've got a sort of senior management team that can support us in the things that we're not as good at as other things is really important. That's grown a lot in the last few years, and we're reaping the benefits as a result. Um, yeah, founding a company together is a big step. Um, and at the time, we were really good friends, and you kind of work on that basis that, well, this would be exciting, and this is something we both want to do, and so let's give it a go. We're much better friends now than we were when we started Yard, certainly, and it was the right thing to do. I think, from my perspective, you can not often go wrong co-founding a business. You've got the support of the other person. When you're having a bad day, hopefully they're not having the same bad day, and vice versa. But you've got that blend of skill sets then, and you're both working towards that same really ambitious goal, and sharing the risk and sharing the responsibilities and the pressures. So for me, I think that was one of the key things that has led to success for Yard, is the fact that it's not just me and it's not just Stephen, it's the two of us working towards the same goals. Uh, you can't manage work-life balance with a young family and a new business. In fact, I don't even know how to answer the question. You get to a point where you're just working so hard that you have to get to the next step. Families grow up, businesses grow up as well, to be honest. So you've just got to resign yourself to the fact that starting a business is hard work, and young family or not, the pressures are the same. It's still really hard work, but it's really rewarding because you get to reap the rewards that you're creating. The highlights, the rewards for starting Yard, I suppose, were just, like I said, almost that vindication that we can do something, and well, hope I don't speak out of turn here, but we're well respected people now for having achieved what we've achieved. But we've done that with the control and with the belief that what we were saying was right, and I think it's been 12 years now, but I think we've kind of vindicated in that regard. There are other rewards. It's really rewarding to have staff work for you and to have people rely on you for their jobs. And it's really nice when the staff acknowledge that and they say how sort of good a workplace it is. So there are all these different rewards that you can get out of starting and running a business. But it's almost that sort of sense of personal achievement that I think is probably the key one. That's, I imagine, the reason that most people go down this nutty decision of starting their own thing. Yeah, tapping into the results sometimes quite difficult, because you do have bad days and you do have business pressures and struggles and clients that you've upset for some reason and staff that have upset each other for other reasons. I think, again, the advice I'd have to give there is make sure that you're always celebrating the things that go well. We went through a long time where we were sort of growing quite stealthily, frankly, but just growing and growing and new staff here and there. But we're always looking to what's next. And whilst that's great because that's ambition, at the same time, sometimes you've got to say, hang on, let's celebrate what we've achieved here, because that'll make the next step a bit easier. Yeah, so Yard's kind of in a strange position in so much as it's a sort of specialist services business and a product business, and we've run other product businesses as well, alongside or around or within the Yard business as well. I think the difficulty or the sort of the danger with doing that is you can't, how to say this without sounding defeatist is quite the sort of challenge, but you can't run two businesses well, almost, especially if they're very different. So if you want to have a product business and a services business, they kind of need to be the same business, and those two things need to work with your vision and your goal to be, to drive you to that same endpoint. And at that point, it's easy because, you tell the staff below you, this is the endpoint we're driving towards, and it's understood across the entire office, no matter which part of the business they work for. So that then makes that easier. If you've got two utterly separate businesses and you're planning on sort of running them almost as a full-time employee, it's very difficult. Well, there's a lot available, and I know there's a lot available now, but we didn't really realise that until, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years in. So the advice, the advisors, the people we've got around us now, people that we've found through our network. We've got a CFO, he's a consultant, and he's one of the best advisors we've got. Brilliant guy, and gives us very honest advice. We've got people who we've met through investor networks that again are helping to sort of take us along the journey that they've been on previously. I think the point there is we've managed to find the right support network now, but we didn't do it early enough. It's very easy to sort of actually pull that in early doors, I've learned, and the regret is that we didn't do that early on, but it's a lot easier for people to do so now, I think. Why didn't we ask for it? I think there's a challenge, there's a difficulty between trying to balance sort of getting advice and filling out paperwork and things like that, which you have to do to pull down on certain sort of funds or support, and doing the job that you're trying to do. Like I said, we were arguably quite lucky to be quite busy to accelerate pretty quickly in the early days of Yard. What that meant was we were absolutely focused on getting the stuff done for clients, and not necessarily taking that step back to say, well, look, if we fill this form in, we can get a grant over here, or if we put the effort in meeting these people, we'll be able to call on their support longer term. So it was a trap of being far too busy really, and not being able to put the time to it, but we realise now how important it is to put that time to it at the same time. It's difficult to say where to plug or which gaps you need to let other people plug for you, because notoriously founders of businesses kind of want to do everything. It's hard to let go of some things. It was probably 10 years into the journey that I started properly letting go of certain parts of the business. But we've got people that we trust to do these things, and that's the maddest part of it. So if you're getting the right people in to support you, and be they employees or be they support staff around you, it's important to just let go, to sort of take that jump and say, I'm going to ignore something over here because I'm giving someone else the power to go and deal with that. And I suppose you kind of need to look at it as, what's the worst that can happen? They'll do a good job of it, or they'll do a bad job of it. And it's not the end of the world necessarily if they do a bad job of it, because you can step in where you have to. But if you try and hold everything all the time, then it becomes quite heavy really quickly. It's been mixed.
Yeah.
I think if I'm advising people, one of the bits of advice I'd say is it's quite easy to get investment, but it's also quite easy to get the wrong type of investment. And we've got a whole host of anecdotes that I could share, but it's probably too much detail for now. But we've done angel rounds, we've done not a VC round, but a straight equity round with Development Bank Wales. We've taken loans in terms of investment. Yeah, we've got quite a bit of experience now in that field. It can be a minefield. I think the key thing is, if you're taking money off someone, you need to trust them. It's all well and good saying, oh wow, we've got this investment pool, but actually if you're going to be dragged over the coals for that, then it's almost not worth it. There are always other ways that you can do these things. We're in a slightly different position now because we're not pre-revenue, we're not small anymore, so we can almost be a bit more picky about what we do. And of course, we've got 12 years worth of networking in these areas now, and we know sort of good investors that we can call on if needs be. But But for someone just starting out, I think there's nothing wrong, say, with looking at DBW as an option for early investments. There seems to be a sort of weird reputational sort of problem that DBW have got locally, where people say, I'm just a startup, so they won't touch me, or I don't want to take their money for that for whatever reason. But we've had really good experiences with them. They started off as a loan investor with us, which we fully repaid when we'd grown a bit, and then they became an equity investor, and it's good for us. The reason it's good for us is because they let us get on with our business. And I think no matter who the money comes from, if they're letting you get on with doing your business, then you're kind of golden. But the danger is that people will step in and say, actually, I either want a piece of this, or I'm going to start taking a salary from this, or I want to get involved or interfere in the business, and then it can become quite a dangerous thing, weirdly. Good investors got some cash. That's a good start. But it is that sort of that personal relationship with investors, in my view. I think you need to have that personal relationship, and you build that up over a little bit of time, to be able to say, I know I can work with you, because that's what these guys are. They're an extension of your business. They're not giving you the money out of the kindness of their heart. They're giving you the cash because they want to make more cash, and they're shrewd guys, and they're going to make sure that happens that way. The danger is if they see that as being, I don't trust you now, the business owner, I'm stepping in here, well then it can become a very sort of bad story very quickly. So yeah, build on the personal relationship, look for people that you would like to work with, because those are the people that you'll have the best results with ultimately. So our experience of setting up and building in Wales, I suppose the thing to point out here is we've got two offices. Sorry. So our experience of setting up and building in Wales, I think the thing to point out is we've got two offices, one in Wales and one in Edinburgh. We've decided against going for any sort of London presence, although we do sometimes get clients who say, oh, hang on, you haven't got a London office? It's quite easy to point out there's a 5:12 train from Cardiff that gets you in for a 7:30 meeting. So actually, it's not a big problem. I was in a workshop yesterday, and this is quite timely, in fact, and one of the things that was pointed out in that workshop is there are limiting factors in any business, but actually how you communicate those factors makes them potentially positive factors. So in that regard, being based in Wales, especially being based in Cardiff, and I know this is, I shouldn't be too Cardiff focused, but that's where I'm from and that's where the business is from. We've got 3 good universities on our doorstep. We've got people coming out of those universities that we can train up, and there's a good sort of reputation of graduates from the Cardiff universities. Our cost base is lower than it would be in London. So what we can say to clients is, we're in Wales, we're in Scotland, but actually that's a benefit for you as the customer, because we don't have a big plush London office that's costing us a fortune, and therefore costing you by extension a fortune. We should have tapped into the support a bit more in Wales. I know it's there, but we haven't really, even now, we haven't really done that. We have spoken to Welsh Government about a little bit of grant funding for some growth, which is good. So we know that's there. That was definitely worth the paperwork. And the rest of it's just what you make of where you are, basically. It's certainly no bad thing, growing a business in sort of provincial areas, Wales and Edinburgh. Sorry, it's Cardiff and Edinburgh specifically. But Wales specifically has proven to be a sort of real positive for us. What's coming up next for our 3-year plan? I think one of the things that we've been good at over the most recent years, and that comes from having a good CFO advisor, is making sure that financially we know what the 3-year plan looks like. And when you get to a business of our size now with 50 odd people in there, actually your 3-year plan sometimes is just, here are the numbers we're going to hit. So we've got some good targets around growth. We've got growth therefore in staff and growth in services. Those are the key things for us. We're at a position now, and this isn't something we're looking at actively right now, but we're at a position where we can actually start looking at acquisition maybe of other businesses. And that's quite exciting. I really like the idea of that. But we're not there yet with that. But look out for that being part of the plan maybe in the next 3 years. Yeah, I mean, one of the struggles that we've got with kind of staff, I suppose, is there is a lead time. And I talked about the benefit of the university structure, but there's a lead time to staff coming on board then. The other thing is, if we're taking that sort of approach, we're training those guys in the things that we know already. We're not necessarily bringing in skilled people in services that we don't currently provide, but we could be adding to our business offering. So I think it's something like that, something complementary with good people. That relationship piece again is quite key. That's probably quite a bit smaller than us, but something that we can bring into the fold, introduce to the clients that we've got, who are pretty good, and then be able to grow our service offering and hence our revenues from those clients as well. I think one of the key major trends for us that we've noticed, and that it was kind of there for London and Manchester maybe and a little bit of Bristol, but it's now everywhere, is businesses understand the value of data. We've been talking about data for 12 years, and a little bit before that in Lloyd's as well. But businesses now start to understand what they can do with it, what the benefits of having data are, how they can make better marketing decisions based on those data points. So actually, the trend for me in our industry is a maturity of the marketplace. Bigger companies surrounding us here in Cardiff, but bigger companies right the way across the UK. And the ability to tap into that, therefore, and provide those services which people are now actually looking for, as opposed to us having to sort of educate the marketplace to then sell them a service. So that's the big trend for me, is the value of that sort of data piece, I think. So we do a lot of machine learning, we do a lot of modelling for clients now, which we've always had the skills to do, but we would never have, no one would have ever entertained working with us on that piece because they just weren't there yet. They didn't have the data collection in place, they didn't have the knowledge of their existing customers, and they didn't have the systems to be able to handle these sorts of things. One of the key trends for us as well, I suppose, around that is the fact that Amazon now provide, services, web services, as you need them. So now for businesses to be able to do machine learning, and to be able to do a project where they do some AI on a marketing campaign or on customer segments or any of these sorts of things is much easier, much less costly. They don't have to buy all this kit up front to run these things, and much less risky, therefore, as well. Yeah, it is a lot easier for startups now in the tech space, especially. Back when we started, a lot of the work that we did was going on site with a client and physically plugging into their servers and setting up software and doing things that way. Those kind of barriers don't exist anymore. There aren't many businesses holding on now saying, I'm not going to use cloud computing anymore. The vast majority now are embracing that. Equally, things like Python and R and those sorts of programming languages now have reams and reams and reams of libraries written for them. So actually machine learning, instead of being an academic task or a task that you had to be very intelligent and very skilled to be able to carry out, and this isn't belittling the marketplace, but actually it's a lot more accessible now to people to do this sort of stuff very quickly. So yeah, it is easier now for tech startups to get a real foot up and to accelerate quickly as well, I think. And that's one of the key things. You're not going to, let's talk about product tech startup. Their speed to market now can be much quicker than it could have been 10, 12 years ago. Tips for wish I'd known at the start. Yeah, tap into as much support as you can get. Don't ever be afraid to do that part of it, because you almost have to admit that someone knows better than you, but they do. There are people out there who know their own little niche piece a lot better than you will, and a lot better than I do now, or anybody else maybe does. So that's one of the key things, is get as much support around you as you can. Have a go. I mean, that's what we did 12 years ago, and we're doing pretty well now. And if you have a go and you fail early on, well, there's not an awful lot lost, if I'm honest. So that's one of the key things as well. And I suppose kind of around the support piece again, but don't be afraid to delegate stuff to other people, because it otherwise becomes very tiring very quickly. And you need that support around you of good people that are going to support you as you take this forward. one of the other things that I would suggest is don't ever sort of take your eye off your own personal development. You change a lot over time. I'm unrecognisable to the guy I was 12, 15 years ago, where I was very shy and very coy and very technical, and those skills were still there, but I definitely wouldn't have thrived in a business environment. And now I'm very different, I think it's worth saying. So don't ever take your eye off your own personal development as well. When you start working with clients, they are demanding, so you can't afford to be the shy guy anymore who's going to take, or who's not going to defend your position, but at the same time come across as confident and capable as well. The thing that did it for me was after 3 or 4 years of Yard, went to a conference, and we had our CEO of, it was a product business that we'd set up. He'd stepped out. He couldn't turn up to this conference, so I found myself on stage with 850 people in front of me. First time of doing that sort of presenting on that scale. So once you've done that, anything else is kind of doable, I suppose. So but you change is kind of the point there, and you have to.